At my father's birthday celebration, the place card at my seat read, "The Black Sheep," instead of my name. My stepmother was laughing. "Well, it's the truth," she said. Then I stood up, clinked my glass and said, "I'd like to make a toast to the fact that this is the last time you'll see me." My father was breathless, but the real shock happened when I walked out the door and left a final goodbye. I don't really know how to start this, but I need to get it out of my head. I'm Irene. I'm 31 years old and I work as a financial analyst in Madrid. I don't usually share personal things, but after what happened on Saturday at my father's birthday dinner, I can't stop thinking about it. I'll be direct. When I arrived at the restaurant and looked for my place at the table, I found a card with 2 words. The Black Sheep. Not my name, not a simple Irene. The Black Sheep. I stood there frozen, staring at the card, feeling the heat rise in my neck. I heard a muffled giggle. Beatriz, my father's wife, raised her glass with her "Oh darling, how dramatic you are" smile. "Oh Irene darling, do you like the joke?" For a moment I thought about doing what I always do. Pretend it didn't affect me, smile and sit down as if nothing happened. But this time something in me clicked. I grabbed my glass, tapped the rim with the spoon and said aloud with complete calm, "I'm toasting to the last time you're going to see me." Silence. I could see Beatriz's face tense. My father frowned as if he didn't understand what had just happened. Maria, my stepsister, looked away. Pascual swallowed hard. I didn't wait for an answer. I left the glass on the table and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. But if you want to understand why this wasn't just a joke, I have to tell you a little more. Since my father married Beatriz, his new family always came first. I was something like an unofficial housekeeper. I helped, I did favors, they asked me for things, but I was never really a part of anything. I remember one day I was 14 years old and I had been saving for weeks to buy a book I wanted. Just when I was about to order it, Beatriz said with a forced smile, "Irene darling, could you lend that money to Maria? She needs new shoes for her dance class." I looked at my father, hoping he would say something, but he just nodded. "Don't be selfish, you can wait another day." When I was 17, I got a scholarship to university. I was excited. I couldn't wait to tell my father. "Dad, I got accepted to university." He barely looked up from the newspaper. "That's good. And could you help out more around the house? Beatriz is exhausted." "Dad, I'm going to study in another city." "Don't start with those ideas. You'll stay here, close to the family." "The family? Pascual is also leaving." "No, that's different. Irene, don't compare." Of course, it was always different when it came to them. Years passed and I cut contact. I replied to messages out of politeness, some calls at Christmas and little else. That's why I was surprised to receive an invitation for his 60th birthday at an expensive restaurant. "You should come, Irene. It's your father after all." My uncle tried to convince me. "Now I'm his daughter? How convenient." "No, don't be dramatic. It's just a family dinner." I decided to give it a chance. Mistake. The restaurant was full, everyone chatting, laughing, as if they were the happiest family in the world. I arrived and instantly felt like I didn't belong. "Irene, what a surprise to see you," Beatriz said in her fake sweet tone. "You invited me, didn't you?" "Yes, of course. Although I thought you wouldn't come." I smiled without humor. I approached the table and saw the card. The Black Sheep. I blinked. I couldn't believe it. Maria giggled. Pascual muttered something and laughed under his breath. Beatriz took a sip of wine and looked at me with amusement. "It's just a joke, darling. Don't get like that." Joke? My whole childhood and adolescence they had treated me like a second-class citizen, and now they expected me to laugh with them? No, not this time. I took my glass, made a slight clink with the spoon, and said with all the calm in the world, "I toast to the last time you're going to see me." There was a brutal silence. My father frowned as if he wanted to say something but didn't know what. Beatriz put her glass on the table. Maria and Pascual didn't know where to look. I left the glass, turned around and left. After that came the messages. My father tried to call me. I didn't answer. Beatriz sent me a message. "Irene, you behaved like a child. It wasn't that big of a deal." Maria posted in the family group. "Dramatic as always." And me? I poured myself a glass of wine at home, sat on the sofa and breathed. Because for the first time I realized something important. I'm not the black sheep. I simply stopped trying to fit in a place where I was never welcome. I left the restaurant thinking I would feel relief, that it would be one of those movie moments where the protagonist cuts off everything toxic and suddenly their life improves. But no. I stood there on the sidewalk for a few seconds, looking at my phone screen as the notifications exploded. Dad. Irene, what does this mean? You can't be serious. Beatrice, really, how childish. It was just a joke. Maria. Family group, seriously, you had to make a drama out of it? I locked the screen and hailed a cab. I didn't have the energy for this. The next morning I woke up to 23 missed calls. 11 from Dad, 6 from Beatrice, 3 from Maria, 2 from Pasquale, 1 from my uncle, and more than 50 messages in the family group. I started reading. Dad, Irene talked to me. We can fix this. Beatrice, your father is very upset. I don't understand why you did this. Maria, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this was too much. Pasquale, you've humiliated us all. I hope you're happy. Before, this would have affected me. I would have felt guilty. I would have started to wonder if I overreacted if I went too far. But not this time. I entered the family chat, pressed leave group, blocked Beatrice and Maria, and replied to my father, there's nothing to fix. Don't look for me anymore. And for the first time in a long time I felt free. After blocking almost my entire family, I thought they would leave me alone. Wrong. 3 days later my phone rang with an unknown number. I hesitated to answer, but something inside me told me to. Irene, it was my father. Look, I know you're upset, but we need to talk. No, we don't need to talk. You can't just cut ties with your family. I already did. Silence. Okay, Irene. If you want to distance yourself, I respect that. But there's something we need to clarify. I knew it instantly. He never called just to talk. There was always a reason, always something he needed. The money your mother left for you. My stomach sank. We've been using it for family expenses. I gripped the phone tighter. We've been using it. Well, Beatrice and the kids have had a lot of needs these years. That tone, that same patient tone he used when I was 16 and asked him why I couldn't take English classes like Maria. They need it more than you, Irene. But, Mom saved that money for me. You're smart, you can find another way. Maria needs opportunities. I managed. I worked after school. I gave private lessons. I learned English on my own. Meanwhile, my stepsister went to a summer course in London, paid for with the same fund my mother had saved for my future. And now he was telling me they had been using it. How much is left? I asked, feeling my voice tense. Don't be like that, Irene. It was all for the good of the family. How much is left? Pause. Nothing. I closed my eyes. I suspected it, but hearing it from his mouth provoked a rage I hadn't felt for years. My mother had worked her whole life to save that money. It wasn't a millionaire's amount, but it was enough to help me buy my first apartment, to have a secure base. And now it didn't exist. You have to understand, Irene. Pasquale needed a car. Maria had to do her master's degree in London. And with the house, we had some unforeseen events. A bitter laugh escaped me unintentionally. A master's degree, a car, unforeseen events. How convenient. I imagined my father signing the check for Pasquale's car. I saw him in my mind raising his glass at Maria's graduation dinner in London, smiling proudly. And I saw myself at 19, eating rice and eggs for weeks to be able to pay the rent for a room in a shared apartment. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I remembered the first time I asked for help. Dad, the rent has gone up. I need some support until I find another job. Irene, you can't depend on me for everything. Beatrice and the kids also have needs. Since then, I never asked him for anything again. I took a deep breath. Dad, did you sign a document when you took that money out? What? No, of course not. Then we have a problem. Silence. Irene, you're not thinking of reporting it? Yes. I'm thinking about it. I heard him release a nervous breath. Irene, we're family. You can't do this. You already did. I hung up. And this time I blocked him. The message arrived the next day from a number I didn't have saved. If you do this, forget about us. I didn't need to ask who it was. Forget about them, as if they hadn't done it to me first. I didn't answer. I finished my coffee and went to work without paying any more attention to it. That afternoon, while I was reviewing some documents in the office, my phone vibrated. It was my uncle. I hesitated to answer, but I did. Irene, listen to me. This is getting out of control. No, uncle. What's out of control is that they stole my money. But he's your father. And you really want to see him in court? I want to get back what's mine. But it's your father, and that makes him untouchable? No. But this is too much. It's not right. It's not right for me to defend myself, but it was okay for him to spend my money? Silence. I don't want this to end badly, Irene. It already ended badly. I hung up. That night, while I was checking some emails on my laptop, someone rang the doorbell. I wasn't expecting anyone. I went to the peephole. My father. I stood in silence for a moment with my hand on the lock. I thought about not opening it, but I knew that if I didn't, he would come back. I opened the door. His expression was tense. Can we talk? We already are. Let me in. No. He sighed and ran a hand through his hair. Irene, you can't do this. What exactly? The report. I crossed my arms. It's not a report. It's a lawsuit. And yes, I can. We're family. I let out a laugh. Now we're family? I gritted my teeth. When exactly were we? When you used my money for Pasquale and Maria? When you treated me like the free nanny? Or when you allowed them to call me the black sheep at your own dinner? That was a joke. Don't come with that. He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. Irene, if you continue with this, there will be consequences. Are you threatening me? No, but if you involve lawyers in this, it's over. I looked at him without blinking. For me, it was over a long time ago. I closed the door in his face. And the next day I went to see my lawyer. The day after seeing my lawyer, my mailbox was full of letters from banks I'd never used. I opened them one by one. Loan applications, suspicious activity in an account in my name that I hadn't authorized. I took a deep breath. This couldn't be a coincidence. Minutes later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Irene, what have you done? It was my father. Sorry, my accounts have been frozen. What a shame. You think this is a game? No. But you thought you could use my money and get away with it. You have no idea the trouble you've just caused.
No, Dad.
You created the problem. I'm just solving it. I hung up. A minute later, another call. Beatrice. I ignored it. Then a message. Beatrice, what kind of daughter does this to her own father? I laughed ironically. The same one who steals from him to his face and then pretends nothing happened. I went to work as if nothing had happened. At noon, my uncle called again. This time I answered. Irene, your father is desperate. Not my problem. He's going to lose everything. I already lost everything with him years ago. This isn't going to stay like this. I laughed. No, of course not. Now he'll have to face the consequences. I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I really felt at peace. A couple of weeks passed without anyone trying to contact me. No calls, no messages, no unexpected visits. For the first time in years, my life felt calm. Until one day I received an email. It was from the bank. Dear customer, we inform you that the loan requested in your name has been rejected due to suspicious activity in your account. I read it twice. I hadn't applied for any loan. I opened the bank app and checked the transactions. Someone had tried to use my information. I took a deep breath and dialed my lawyer's number. Irene, I was just about to call you. What happened? My father tried to make a transfer from an account in my name. I felt a mix of anger and weariness. And they succeeded? No, everything is blocked. But this is no longer just a family problem. This is fraud. I ran a hand over my face. And now what? Now it's up to you. We can take this further. I closed my eyes. My father had already crossed too many lines. I took a deep breath and answered, yes, take it further. Good. Be prepared because they're not going to like this. I'm used to it. I hung up. Not an hour passed before my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. Irene, please, my father. I didn't say anything. You can't do this. I already did. I'm going to lose everything like when I lost my money, right? Silence. It wasn't like that. I laughed coldly. You don't know what it's like to lose everything, but you're going to learn. I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I knew that this time I was in control. The legal process began faster than I imagined. My lawyer explained that we had a solid case. There was evidence of the transfers without my consent, bank records, and even messages from my father admitting that he had used the money. This is not just a civil case, Irene. It's also fraud. What does that mean? That if the judge considers it serious, there could be criminal consequences. I didn't react. I just nodded. Are you going ahead with this? Yes. Good. Get ready because they're going to try to make you change your mind. Let them try. And they tried. 2 days later, my uncle called again. This time I answered. Irene, listen to me. This is getting out of control. No, uncle. What got out of control was them stealing my money. But he's your father. And you really want to see him in court? What I want is for him to learn that he can't do whatever he wants without consequences. He sighed. Beatrice is scared. She says that if this continues, they're going to lose everything. I don't care. Irene. I don't care. I hung up. That night the doorbell rang. I went to the peephole and saw my father again. This time I wasn't going to ignore him. I opened the door. Irene, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about. Please. I sighed and crossed my arms. What do you want? I know you're angry, but this isn't fair. Fair. I let out a sarcastic laugh. You want to talk to me about justice? I did it for the family. You didn't do it for them, never for me. You have to stop this. I'm not going to stop anything. If this continues, Beatrice and the kids are going to be hurt. They're not children, Dad. They're adults just like I was when you left me with nothing. And I had to take care of my life alone. He didn't say anything. It's not revenge. It's justice. And I closed the door in his face. A few weeks passed since the last time I saw my father at my door. The legal process continued to advance. My lawyer kept me informed of every step. They've frozen his accounts. Good. Beatrice tried to transfer money from another account, but it was also blocked. Better. And it seems they've put the house up for sale. I remained silent. The house. The same house that was once mine. Until my father decided that it belonged to his new family. I didn't feel pity, only satisfaction. Irene, are you sure you want to go ahead with this? Completely. 2 days later, my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I ignored it. Minutes later, another number. This time I answered. Irene, it's Beatrice. I closed my eyes and sighed. What do you want? This is too much. You're ruining us. I'm glad you noticed. Think about your father. He's devastated. He didn't seem so devastated when he decided to steal from me. Silence. We can reach an agreement. There's no need for this to go any further. I laughed. No. Irene, please. No. And I hung up. The next day, as I was leaving work, I found someone waiting outside. Maria. I crossed my arms. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. We have nothing to talk about, Irene. Listen to me. I didn't answer. I know you're upset, but what you're doing is leaving us with nothing. Ah, now it's us? Because when they left me out of the family, they didn't seem so worried. She looked down. I didn't know that my mother and your father had used your money. But you did know that they paid for your master's degree with it. She didn't answer. Irene, we need your help. I let out a laugh. Now you ask for my help, but when I needed it, where were you? I didn't wait for an answer. I turned around and left. The trial didn't last as long as I expected. My lawyer told me that the case was solid and that with all the evidence, there wasn't much my father could do. And he was right. The judge ruled in my favor. My father had to return the money, every euro, and if he didn't, he would face more serious charges. I left the courthouse without looking back. I knew my father would look for me, and he didn't take long to do so. 2 days later, I saw him waiting outside my work. I stopped a few meters away, crossing my arms. Irene, please. Don't do this. You can't hate me forever. I don't hate you. He looked at me surprised. Then, I just don't care anymore. He looked down. For the first time, I saw him truly defeated. I lost my daughter. I shrugged. You didn't lose her. You gave her away when you decided that your new family was worth more than me. He sighed. Is there really nothing I can do? Yes. Except that this is over. I turned around and left. I didn't look back. I didn't see him again. Because this time I chose myself. A year passed since the last time I saw my father. A year without calls, without messages, without anyone from that family trying to come back into my life. And the truth is, I've never felt better. It's not that I was happy about what happened to them. I didn't care. I moved to Barcelona, left behind Madrid, the memories, the places that reminded me of them. I wanted a fresh start and I got it. A better job, a better apartment. A life where I no longer had to justify my existence to anyone. And then one day a message arrived. Unknown number. Irene, it's your father. I know you don't want to hear from me, but I wanted to tell you that I'm sorry. I lost everything. Beatriz left me. Pascual and Maria don't talk to me anymore. I'm alone. I'd like to see you. Just to talk. I read the message several times. I felt something in my chest. Not sadness, not anger, nothing. And for the first time I understood something. I was never the black sheep. They simply were never my family. The doorbell rang. I smiled before opening the door. Ready? He said, leaning against the frame with his usual calm smile. I grabbed my bag and walked out, leaving the phone on the table without even bothering to reply. There were more important things in my life now, and for the first time I knew I had made the right choice. Responding to your questions and comments on Reddit. I never thought this story would reach so many people. Honestly, I just wanted to get it out of my system. But here I am reading hundreds of comments. Some support me, others. Well, I'm going to answer a few things because after a year, I think it's time to truly close this chapter. You're selfish. It's your family. How could you sue your own father? Because he stole from me. There's no nice way to say it. He used the money my mother left for me and spent it on his new family. And not only that, he treated me as if I were an extra in his life, as if I were only there to serve others. If it had been a stranger who did that, no one would doubt that the right thing to do is to sue. But because he's my father, I should let it go? No. If he had seen me as family, he would never have done what he did to me. But you lost your father. Don't you regret losing him? Losing is when you let go of something that was once yours. I never had a father. I had a man who gave me life and then cast me aside as soon as he found something more interesting. So no, I didn't lose him because he was never there to begin with. I'm sure you were a difficult daughter, and that's why they treated you that way. You know how hard it is to be a daughter who is never enough? I was never the priority, never the favorite, never the one who had the right to receive help. There was always an excuse, there was always someone more important. And the worst part is that for years I tried to earn his love. I thought that if I was good, if I helped, if I didn't complain, at some point they would see me. Never happened. So tell me how difficult I was if all I did was exist in the wrong place. How do you feel now? Free. But also broken in some parts. I'm not going to lie. There were nights I cried, moments when I thought, what if I'm wrong? But every time I doubted, I remembered the years they made me feel worthless. I remembered the birthday where they called me the black sheep. I remembered every time they told me they couldn't help me while they spent money on others. I remembered every time they made me feel like I didn't belong. And the doubt would go away. Now I have a life where I no longer have to prove anything to anyone. And that's all that matters.